There are a couple of different ways that you can sort or categorize triangles. The two main ways of sorting triangles is to look at either their angles or their sides. So you can look at angles, or you can look at the sides of the triangle. You don't usually look at both at the same time. It's one or the other. So if you're looking at the angles of a triangle, you have three options. You have an acute triangle. That's like this one here, ABC. Each one of the angles is acute, meaning it's less than 90 degrees. You could also have a right triangle, which is like this one here, where one of the angles is exactly 90 degrees. And then your third option is the obtuse triangle, which would be like this one, where one of the angles is clearly greater than 90 degrees. So those are your two options. You have the acute, that's this one, you have the right, and you have the obtuse. All you do is you look at the angles and you say, if one of them is a right angle, then it is a right triangle. If one of them is obtuse, then it is an obtuse triangle. The other thing that you can look at when categorizing triangles is you can look at the sides of the triangle. So for instance, you would measure each side. Let's say that I measured this side and that this was an 8. And let's say I measured this side and it was also an 8. And I measured the base of the triangle and it was a 5. Do you see how you have two sides that are the same? That is, they're congruent. We can mark it like that to show that this side is equal to that side. If you have a triangle with two sides that are congruent, then that is called an isosceles triangle, which is a very difficult triangle to spell, but there it is, isosceles. It also works, and we also call it an isosceles triangle, if all three sides are the same. This also is called an equilateral triangle. Equilateral. But that's just another type of an isosceles triangle, the equilateral triangle. As long as you have two or more sides that are congruent, then we call it isosceles. As opposed to what we have here in this triangle, where we have maybe a 3 here, and maybe a 15 here, and maybe a 12 here. In this case, none of the sides are congruent to another, and so that is called a scalene triangle. So there are two different ways to categorize triangles, either by looking at their angles or by looking at their sides. With categorizing by looking at the angles, you have three options: 1, 2, and 3. Acute, right, and obtuse. And by looking at just the sides, you have two options: isosceles or scalene. Equilateral is just a specialized type of isosceles. Okay, I hope that makes things clear.